So what we're doing today, as mentioned in the introduction, is we're bringing together the Tableau football user group and the Tableau sports user group, which is hosted over in the US with Jimmy and the team. So we've got two very different types of speakers, which I thought was really good to give us a bit of variety. And really, we're going to run through that today. So after that, we'll pass back to Jimmy and start the train rolling.
Sounds great. Thanks. So yeah, just quickly, why are we here? We like to kind of do demos from industry leaders, Tableau tips and tricks. Just kind of getting everybody together is really the concern here, right? Is we're a little bit isolated, by nature of our current circumstances. So getting together and chatting through some of these things is very useful. And hopefully these are connections that we can kind of build this community that are going to persist beyond, the current scenario. So really appreciate everyone being here. I'm very excited to be partnered with the European Football Group. So let's go ahead and dive in. And as we have sort of already covered here, we're going to do some trivia. So now we are in the real deal here. So this one's actually for a Tableau prize. First one to answer correctly in the chat. What coach came off the bench to play for his team in the Stanley Cup Finals? Again, apologies for the U.S.-centric nature for some of these. We do have an EU-centric question as well. We're looking for a coach that came off the bench, and just again, immediately, that is absolutely wild. So it was for the Rangers in 1928, and I see it from Heath Pratt here. It was our friend Lester Patrick. If you don't know this story, I would strongly recommend looking at it. I do love the answer of Ted Lasso, by the way. Lester Patrick came off the bench at 44 years old, had not played goalie in his actual time as a defender, only let one goal in, and they ended up winning the game to tie 1-1. So really great story. But that is the first prize goes to Heath. Thank you very much. On deck for today, we'll do some introductions. As Oscar mentioned, we have a couple of great speakers from different parts of the world, and then we'll leave some time for some closing and questions. And I'll actually hand it over to Eva here as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy, and welcome everybody. What I would like to encourage you to do is to use this next hour to connect with other people. And of course, it being virtual, the whole networking might be a bit more awkward than standing around with a beer and some pizza. But you have two key features in Zoom. The first one is use the Q&A box if you have any questions for us as the panel hosting this, or for the speakers. So make sure to put that in the Q&A box so we know those are the questions. But if you just want to chat or introduce yourself to others or find people around a certain topic, please make sure to use the chat that you've already frantically typed your answers to trivia questions into. And that's going to be really helpful to go beyond this session and actually make some lasting connections. So feel free to, share, I don't know, your name and where you work. If you want people to connect with you on LinkedIn, it's going to make life a lot easier. So try to do that, because hopefully with this group, we're going to continue fostering that and people can connect and build a good network. Oh yeah, and we're going to hand over to introductions. I'm going to start as I'm already talking. My name is Eva Murray. I work as a technology evangelist for Exasol. I'm based in London. I'm part of the Tableau community. I lead the project Makeover Monday that hopefully many of you have heard of. Also, I have recently published my second book called Empowered by Data. It's all about building analytics communities. And I'm going to hand over to Ruud from PSV Eindhoven to introduce himself, and then we're going to go counterclockwise.
Yeah, thanks, Eva. My name is Ruud van Elk. I'm the head of sports science and analytics for PSV Eindhoven, mainly working for the first team. My background is actually in human biology, and also have a master's in health sciences. I'm with the club for the last 9 seasons now. Started out in the academy and with the first team, and in my current role is I started this year actually. And I'll try to tell you guys a little bit about how we work today in my talk. Then I'll hand it over to Rusty, I guess.
Thanks. Yeah, my name is Rusty Parker. I work for the Atlanta Hawks in the National Basketball Association in the U.S. I've been with the team for about 5 years, and my background is in sociology. and I will pass it off now.
Thanks. So I'm Oscar. I'm one of the founders of the Tableau Football User Group alongside James and Eva. I work at Tableau and I look after all things sport across the UK. And also an interesting one there, Rusty, which I didn't know about yourself. I also studied sport and sociology at university. So an interesting cross. I think Eva's done her introduction, so we'll bypass her and pass over to James.
Yeah, hi guys. As Oscar mentioned, I'm a co-leader of the Football Tableau User Group. I'm a Tableau public ambassador, big Chelsea fan, as you can see from my photo, and I'm currently working as a finance manager at Paddy Power Betfair, who are a sports betting and entertainment company over here in the UK. Also have a branch over in the US now called FanDuel, if anyone's familiar with those guys.
I am certainly familiar. They've made their way over here, but yeah, I'm Jimmy Steinmetz, the last photo there in the bottom right. I work at Interworks in the U.S. We work a lot with Tableau and just kind of help people get the most out of their Tableau. So I'm the Northeast practice director based here in New York City. Today I'll be a glorified game show host throwing trivia questions at you. And since it was mentioned by a couple others, I studied psychology and philosophy, the natural route to data analytics. All right, jumping in here. So this is for our US group. We meet about once a quarter. Please use that chat functionality. Again, we love the networking is kind of the big thing for us. We also do have the question and answer functionality that we'll use to kind of gather questions for at the end. And then one last thing that I just like to cover, all the speakers and their stories might reference real life scenario planning and decision-making processes. The individuals here are representing their personal work and perspectives. Their statements not represent the larger organizations and affiliates of the industry. Discussions, let's keep them kind of within the group here. So I prefer not to reuse them outside the meeting without the direct written consent. That being said, we are recording these, and the recording should be available after the fact. But we just want to maintain the integrity of the community by creating a place of open discussion, ideas, participation. So yeah, just really great to have you here. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. And now let's get into some of the fun. So I will hand it over to Rusty with the Hawks. And Rusty, if you just want to take control of screen, we're good to go.
Yes, I will take over. All right, can everybody see that? Great. All right, thanks y'all. I'm excited to talk to everybody today. Again, my name is Rusty Parker. I'm the Director of Research and Insights at the Atlanta Hawks. So I work with our marketing, guest experience, community, other departments on the business side of the organization to operationalize, track, visualize all different kinds of data that come across my desk. So today I want to show everybody how we measure our guest experience in our arena and then turn those into meaningful improvements. So a couple of years ago, our arena underwent a giant renovation in order to provide our fans with just a much better experience while they're there watching the game. When it comes to the food and beverage experience or just walking around the concourse, it looks night and day difference. I encourage everybody to come to Atlanta, check out a basketball game. So when that happened, we also decided we needed a better survey experience. So we moved our operation over to Qualtrics and we made a much more responsive, in-depth survey, getting at every aspect of the game or event experience while somebody is on their way to our arena, inside it, and on their way home. So we also built a dashboard to display the full results of the survey. So here you can see it. This is the first summary page, just a nice clean look in case somebody wants to get a quick view of how everything's doing. You can see here on the summary page, and then we have separate pages for each of our specific areas that we want to dive into. We also have a bunch of filters here at the top that will work across the entire dashboard in case you want to hone in on a particular event type, whether a Hawks game or an arena event. You can change the season, dive into just a specific event if you want to. filtered by weekend tier if we won or lost the game, which does make a difference. Buyer type, demographics, anything that you can imagine. You can also see here, here's the quick view, all of our key areas and a quick year-over-year view. The red dot is the current season, or it was last season. The black is the previous season. So you can see, fortunately for us, we're doing better across the board this year than compared to the previous years. That's, of course, very exciting. Then we have a few categorical questions that you can see in our handy dandy pie charts that everybody loves. Looks like my formatting got a little bit messed up here. I'll address that. And then at the bottom, you can just see the number of completed surveys that we have for an event. And you can hover over any of these and see for the Eagles concert, we have 500 surveys completed along with attendance. And then for games, you'll see the game tier and the result of the game. And blue here is arena events or concerts or family shows, things like that. And all the red are the Hawks games. So that's a great summary, but sometimes I really like to get into the weeds. And we really wanted this to be not just something to look at and get a quick idea, but really a tool so that each department in our organization could dive in on their own and see what's going on as well. So every other week, we have a big meeting with our COO, heads of every department in the organization, from guest experience to basketball ops to corporate partnerships, to review all the events that have happened recently and see how we can improve. And then each meeting will start with a review of all the survey data and all the open-ended feedback that we've received. And then each department leader is then responsible for addressing any concerns raised for their areas. So let's click over to some more detailed results. Okay, so here you can see we show, here, this is our Net Promoter Score for every event that we held for the past year. We actually show the results for every question that we ask in the survey. So you can filter this graph to rate the performance of the artist or the team for that particular event. And you can see it gets pretty detailed pretty quickly. But it's a good way to see where there are big differences in performance from event to event, to see, okay, that went really well. How can we keep doing some more of that? That one didn't go as well. What do we need to do? What was the cause behind that? How can we make a change? So, for instance, you can see a lot of variation here in the Net Promoter Score graph. And let's see, so here's a low scored Hawks game. What happened to that Hawks game? Did something terrible happen? What can we do on our side to make a change? In this case, we realized that we were playing the Milwaukee Bucks, who's one of the best teams in the NBA and who has one of the best players in the NBA. And that player actually did not play in this game. So we were already kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit, likely to have a lower score. And even without that best player being in because their best player was still sitting out the game, we were already down a lot of points in the first half. So that's definitely going to contribute to a negative game experience, regardless of how good the food and bev were, regardless of how good the halftime act was or anything like that. So something to keep in mind. Let's see. Here's another low score. It was a concert on a Friday night. It looks like our lowest scored event for the entire year. So we'll look into that to see what could have caused a low score for that event in a minute. You also see on every page we'll have any categorical questions. We'll display those as well. And then at the bottom we have all open-ended responses shown for every game or event. And when you hover over it, you'll be able to see which game it was, the account ID in case we need to do any follow-up with that person, and you can also see the section or the space name where they were sitting, or if they were in a premium space. So a lot of information for reps and for team leaders as they're diving into the data. So let me show you one other section, and we can see. So here we're looking at the overall venue technology experience rating. Let's go down to the clarity and volume of the sound system. So then we can go back, you see the lowest bar here, that's that R&B Mega Fest, where it turns out that that particular tour didn't bring in the best audio equipment, and it did not sound great in our large arena. And so that created a really bad experience for folks, and that really contributed to the Net Promoter Score. So that's just an example of how we can dive into the data, track down what could be causing good or bad experiences. So some real changes have come about in our organization from the survey responses and the meetings that we hold based on them. We improved our stat boards to be more clear. We added more of our fan-friendly priced item, food, and bev options throughout the arena. We improved our signage around the concourse to make it easier to get to your seats and to restaurants. We now require a certain level of sound system for any shows that are coming into the arena. And all these discussions we've had and all the changes that have come about helped us to get to the #1 ranking in the NBA fan experience according to the NBA survey. So it's been a pretty big deal for us. A couple other things that we are able to show on here. We have a quick demographics slide, or if you just want to see what attendees look like. And again, you can filter this on the first page to get down to single game versus plan buyers, etc. A good picture of those. And then a couple of slides that we built that are part of this, that if somebody just comes in to look at these top slides, they would not see. But some, like for instance, reps have access to a rep dashboard where we put every single survey question is now a column in here. Here's a game. Normally there will be a column for rep and a column for attendee name. And whenever you see red dots, that means they gave a negative score, a score of 5 or less for an area. And so they could see, all right, looks like this person didn't have a great time necessarily. They gave a 0 for their Net Promoter Score. So we can go in there and see exactly what scores they gave and what their open-ended responses are for a bunch of questions, and the reps can follow up with any of their clients. We also have an ownership slide. This is something that's auto-created that will populate with the appropriate data points here, and then we can just copy and paste this into our ownership slide that we do regularly every once in a while. So that is our post-event survey dashboard. It's a bunch of questions, but it gives us some really rich data that we can make some pretty meaningful, real changes to.
Yeah, this is excellent. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing here. As a Pacers fan myself, I know Giannis can be a little bit demoralizing. But that's what we got to do. Yeah. Oscar, do you have any questions or anything to add there?
Yeah, I just wanted to again, it's really good to get that level of insight on a business side. I think we've shown a lot of performance-based stuff previously, and actually to understand how, as sport as a entertainment and as a venue, etc., how data still plays a massive part in that. And I think that's where there's a lot of learnings to be done across from the way that the US do things and the way that we do in Europe. And also just for everyone else who's going to have, I'm sure, lots of questions around this, we'll have the Q&A at the end. So just to keep your questions noted down, ready to type in at the end. But that's all from me.
Excellent. Yeah, and you can feel free to drop those in now as well. We'll collect them over the course of it, but we will put a brief pause in it, we'll address those at the end just so we can make sure we have enough time for Ruud. And let me jump back in. Are we back on my screen here?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. So moving forward, we'll do a quick break between. We got another round of trivia here. So again, for a Tableau prize, this one is themed here. So first one to answer in the chat, and let me pull up the chat so I can make sure I can see it. Where is it? There we go. Excellent. So 2 different Atlanta Hawks won the slam dunk contest in back-to-back years. Who were those players? I know we have a couple of Hawks employees on here. And there we go. Again, right off the bat. So I see Clay McClatchy jumping in here. So they won the 1985 and 86. And that are our friends Dominic Wilkins and Spud Webb. Obviously very talented players. I also did have to pull this other little photo here next, just to show how absurd and incredible it is that Spud was able to pull it off, being a little bit smaller than the rest of the guys. This is from the second year when Spud and the center here ended up winning, which is pretty cool. Excellent. All right. Now we'll pass the mic over to Ruud. You want to take over the screen share?
Yes, let me try.
Thank you.
Hopefully you are able to see this now.
Thinking about it.
This won't hide. I'll do it like this. Okay, perfect.
You got
All good to go? Then I will start. Okay, so today I want to take you through a little journey on how we actually started using Tableau and where we are right now. But first, I want to do a little bit of an introduction on how we are organized, because it might be a little bit different than a lot of the maybe the UK and also the US guys that are here, and girls of course are here, that they are used to. So let me do that first. So this is our current performance staff organization. And actually this year we changed a little bit. So in our current organization, we don't have a head of performance anymore. So we actually split up the group into three parts. So we have on the right side our video analysis group, on the left side our S&C group, and in the middle, and that's where I'm from, our sports science and analytics group. So we have three heads of those departments and not one performance manager role that's overseeing all of these. So that might actually be a little bit different. So in my group, we are together with three sports scientists in the academy, myself with the first team, and since this year we are lucky to have one full-time data analyst with us. That's Ferdi. He's mainly responsible for our Tableau deployment. He's pretty much doing most of our building and doing our database management. And then we have Mark there, Mark Ponce. He's a data scientist and he's working for us part-time, mainly on scouting, but also sometimes pitching in with us on the more daily stuff that we have going on around the team. So that's what I wanted to start with. And then I want to go through a little bit of history on how we started using data as a club, and how we moved into Tableau server. So on the top left, this is actually, I think, one of the first things I did at the club when I came in 2012. In the beginning, we started using just Excel, and this is literally typing over data from our GPS or LPM provider that we have. We work with Emotio, but I'll get to that later. So back then it was literally typing over numbers into Excel and building some kind of reports on those. But we quickly find out that that wasn't really working. Way too much data. The limits of Excel came pretty quick. So then back then we decided we had to improve this a little bit. And the first step was to start using proper databases. So we started using SQL Server back in 2013, and that was actually the first step to a real data analysis environment, in my opinion. Back then we decided to start working with Report Builder or Visual Studio, which actually worked fine for us for the first couple of years. The only downside for us, in my opinion, was the fact that it was a lot of coding that we had to do, and before you got something on your screen, it would take quite a while. So back then we already felt a little bit of a need to move to a little bit more user-friendly product, especially because a lot of the people in our staff don't really have programming backgrounds. We wanted to make sure that also the people that don't have a programming background can also start working with the data themselves. Back then we had no budget for Tableau, and we found out that our commercial side of the club, so our ticketing and also our fan store, were using ClickView for some of their reports, and we could lift on that license of them. So we used ClickView for about 3 seasons until 2018, and then we finally got the room and budget to get some proper Tableau server licenses. So since then we are completely moved to Tableau server. And actually the nice thing maybe there is also to say that the stadium or the commercial side of the club is also following us right now in that direction. So that seems to be a wise decision. First, I'll go now to some of our data collection steps. So for the people that are maybe not into football, a little bit of background on what we collect, how we do it, not in too much detail, and then towards some examples on how we present our data back to the coaches. So what we try to do as a group is we try to get a lot of different data from our players in. So we work from the academy up towards the first team, and from the under 19s and up. So the 3 highest teams, we get pretty much everything we can get our hands on. So that's daily tracking data from all training sessions and games. It's event data, it's medical data, of course, subjective data. And what we try to do is get everything in our own databases, and for the coach, just have one platform where they can find their data. So we try to not bother the coaches too much with all the things that are happening in the background, and they just have their Tableau server environment where they can find everything that they need, hopefully. So what we do in the morning, so I'll try to take you to a day of a player at the club. First thing they do in the morning is log into their phones and fill in a wellness questionnaire. So it's in Dutch, but we ask them 5 questions. How well did you sleep? How long did you sleep? How are your muscles feeling? What's your energy level? And we do an RPE score of the training of the day before. And also in this tool is also their calendar. So this is mainly for the academy guys. They have their school schedule in there, their training schedule, medical appointments. So this is their actually their one-stop shop for the players to go to if they need to fill in anything or need to know what they have to do on that specific day. And since this year, this was actually something that was brought by our current head coach, Roger Smith. We also measure CK in our first team players first thing in the morning when they get in. Hopefully everybody's good to train. How we feed this data back, I'll come back to that later. I'll go to the collection part first. Hopefully everybody can train, and we normally train with our Emocho system, which is a locally based, it's a locally based GPS system, which has the big advantage that it's a lot more accurate than GPS. So this measures with 1000 Hertz compared to 5 or maybe 10 Hertz of a GPS system, and it has an error of about 1 to 2 centimeters, so it's extremely accurate. Also, the inter-unit variability is extremely low, so it's, in my opinion, still one of the best systems available. You see that the vest is a little bit more bulky than you are maybe used to from the GPS, but that brings a lot of advantages. We also have GPS available, so if we don't train on a pitch where we have this whole system built up, then we use a ZXY Go GPS system from Kyron Higo. And actually everything comes in to a big glass fiber network on our training ground, and we can do a lot of the feedback live, but I'll focus today on the majority. What we do is our post-training or post-match analysis. So that's the training, and in the games we have a league deal fortunately in Holland since 3 years now. So Track App Kyron Higo is covering all our games in the Eredivisie, and they also monitor our games if we play in Europe. And if we look into these 3 things are actually the bulk of our data. So I'll try to focus on that today as well. So there's of course a lot of other sources. Event data is not in there, so that's something we don't collect ourselves, but that we buy. But I'll try to focus on the big chunks that I just showed. So we use this data for different things, and I think these are pretty straightforward. But I think the main thing is to build good individual and team programs. So trying to get all the guys up to the specific load that we want them to be supposed to on a specific day, and of course monitor their development throughout their time at PSV, especially if it's academy players that are with us for multiple years. It's of course really important to see how they develop, and also based on that, and that's something we've been really focusing on, is also data can be a really good feedback loop on your own program. So I always like to have the example. Let's say we have a player that should work on his agility or his speed, and we put him into an individual program with an S&C coach for a certain amount of time, and we measure them again, and we see they improve. Okay, that's nice, but what if they don't? It's a really nice feedback loop also to discuss with your group. Okay, why is nothing happening? What are we seeing? And data really helps us in that. And more we are also as a group trying to spread our wings a little bit throughout the club. So this is already an ongoing process for years, but supporting medical and more also integrating with scouting is something that we are really focusing on doing. So if you look at our department, we are really all from a performance background, so a lot of S&C coaches, sports scientists, and more we try to develop the department as a more integral part of the club throughout different departments, so not just from a performance perspective. So we have a few rules as a group. What we always try to do is get the data in a very clear and simple way back to our coaches. I often get the question, or it's not true that the coaches are stupid, because that's the question you get. Why does it have to be simple? But in my opinion, it's something that the coaches have a lot on their plates. They have extremely busy jobs, and they just need the key information. So we have a lot of reports where we have a version that's for the coach with the key stuff on it, and we have a really in detail one, let's say for our strength conditioning coach or for our physiotherapist or the doctor or whatever. So being simple and clear is something really important for us. Also, we have to be really fast. I was discussing this with Oscar before the meeting, but if we play on, let's say, a Sunday night, 8 o'clock, last slot in the Eredivisie in the weekend, and the team traveled today actually to Spain for a game tomorrow night. We have a window of about, we think it's 12 to 16 hours in which we have to deliver our feedback back to the coaches and maybe the players if that's necessary. So being able to work quickly and not need hours and hours and hours to analyze your data or to visualize them is really crucial in the world that we work in. And of course, it has to be functional. And I think this is a quote I like to steal from Dave Tenney. We are always asking ourselves, is this piece of information helping the coach to make a better informed decision? And it doesn't have to be a different decision. It can be the same one, but at least he should be better informed. And if he's not, it's probably wise to think again if we should have this information back, because if it's not helping his decision, then it's probably not worth doing it anyway, and we should focus on something else. Then towards, I think, the more interesting stuff, how do we really process all that data that comes in on a daily basis, and what tools and systems do we use for that? This is actually the Emotio tool, and this is what you could call maybe our ETL tool. So this is actually for us the point where we combine a lot of our data streams. So in this tool, we import our tracking data from either games or matches. So both our GPS data, our LPM data from Emotio, but also our track app data from Kaiwen comes in here. We combine it with our event data streams from Opta or maybe Ortec, which we also have available in Holland. And from here, it goes actually to our SQL Server databases. So this tool is really our connection place before all the data goes to our databases and in the end ends up in Tableau. For the people that like to see how we structure that, we are still working with on-premise storage. We are currently looking into moving to our data to the cloud, probably going to be Azure, I think. But for now, we still store everything locally. And what we do now is, if you look at the top left, we have folders per team per season where all our data sets are in. And if we go down a little bit, we have different types of data. So it could be training sessions, could be games, could be physical tests, whatever. And in this case, you see on the 10th or the 5th of October, we played against Fortuna. And in that specific folder for that game, you can find all the data. So we have our F24 and F7 files from Opta, our metadata file and our DAT file from Kaiwen. And in the end, it's all combined in our Emotio file. And from that Emotio file, the data is written to our SQL Server database and in the end to Tableau. For the people that like to see all the tools that we use, so this is a little bit of an overview. So Emotio, Kaiwen are our main tracking providers, and data is processed by Emotio going into SQL Server and all of our other data sets that we have. So we have Soccer Lab as our tool for our medical and our wellness questionnaires, for instance, but also some general data that the coaches fill in is in there, some questionnaires. That's also going to MySQL Server, and our event data is actually a little bit mixed, but the majority is in MySQL as well. And what we do for now, our video department is really closely working with us, but it's still a little bit separate. So We don't do any video integrations in Tableau yet. That's not really working, in my opinion, really well at this point. So video is still a little bit of a separate department, but we are working really closely together to match up everything that we do, of course. Then I made a little screenshot of some of the tables that we have in our database right now. It's a lot more than just this, but this gives you pretty much an overview of how we organize our data and make sure that it's easily searchable and that it's quick enough to build our reports on. So if we start on the top right, in this case, you see that we have different clubs in our database. It's, of course, our data is mainly PSV, but we also have data from other clubs, of course. Within a club, you have teams, and within teams, you have players. And if we go more to the left, you see that on a specific data set, which you see on the middle left, there's a lot of information about what happened in that data set. So it could be a game, could be a training session with different exercises and different parts in there. So all the information is nicely stored in tables. And then on the bottom, you see the tables that contain, in my opinion, the real information, what it's about. We have event data tables. Our TP analyzed table has aggregations on all our physical data. And the sprints table has some more detailed information on the real specific things that happen there. You see one table on the left that's still red, and that's something we are currently working on. We don't store all our raw tracking data yet in our positions table because it's a lot of data. It's millions of rows per training sessions or per game, and SQL Server is not really capable to handle that much data if you do it for multiple teams for a whole season. So we can put raw tracking data in there, but it's something we are currently looking into. How can we utilize that data the best? So what we do now is a lot of aggregations in the Emotion software, and then writing into the database and building our reports on. But I think the use of raw tracking data, especially for more advanced analytics such as space control models, stuff like that, then we really need also to have that raw tracking data available, and that's something that's a big focus for the next couple of years for us. And then I think we are in a Tableau user group, so I think this is the most important stuff. How do we report back to our coaches? And I just picked a couple examples. I cannot show everything in a short presentation, but I want to go over to a few of our reports, not too much detail, and show you what we feed back to them. So this is our landing page. So we have different folders with reports on games, training sessions, testing, medical, stuff like that. And all our coaches and other staff have of course personal login accounts, and everybody sees all our folders, so they have access to everything. Our user control is actually done on the report itself. So let's say a coach logs into a game report. It will be the same game report for the under-19s as it is for the first team, but the under-19 coach will not have access to the first team data. So we do that access on the report level and not on the project level. And within these projects, we of course have a lot of reports, which I'm going to pick a few out. So the first thing we started with was the wellness questionnaire in the morning. And for this, we actually made a really, really simple report, which is a sort of a traffic light system. So normally on the left, you would see the player names, and we have 4 questions. So we have energy levels, sleep scores, and muscle feeling on the top. And we calculate individualized Z scores for Z scores for every player for a specific day of the week. So we really do look into detail on how is a player normally reacting on a type of day. So let's say we have a match day +1 or a match day -1. Of course, you feel different. So we calculate these individualized scores for that specific day of the week. And then we look at, is this value really different from what you're feeling normally? So should we act on that? So what we discussed with the coaches, the numbers that you see in there are actually the Z scores, but it's something that the coaches don't really use. So that's more for us. So for the coaches, we said, okay, you just have to look at the colors. So if the color is gray, then it's no problem at all. You can just let the guy train today. Probably nothing going on there. If we see multiple columns of orange, or we see multiple days in a row where you see orange, it's probably a good idea to talk to the guy. And if we see red or dark red, then go into the dressing room and for sure make sure that you talk to this player. And especially in In an academy setting, this is really important. With the first team, we have a lot of people available and everybody has a lot of individual attention, of course. But in the academy setting, the S&C guys, which this is mainly their work, they probably are not able to talk to all the guys every single day personally. So this is a great conversation starter and say, hey, I saw you slept shit. What's happening? Can we help? And how can we make sure you get through this day in a good way? So really simple report, but very, very useful in our daily practice. This is another example from our academy. So of course, as you probably know, growth in our younger athletes is a big thing, and it's something that we have to manage really carefully. So to do that, one of the things that we do is we try to estimate or calculate their growth spurt, so their peak height velocity. So when are the guys growing the fastest? There's a formula for that which estimates the point where you grow the fastest, and this gives you a value in the end, where with 0 being you are currently on your fastest growth. If the value is higher than 0, it says you already are past your fastest growth in your growth spurt, and if the value is below 1, you're still before your fastest growth. And as you can see, and this is of course a nice age group to look at the under 15s, where there's a lot of biological difference between the players. We have the player here on the left of the graph, which is still 0.9 years before his fastest growth, and we have a guy here on the right who's already 1.3 years behind it. So in this case, these two guys could be born on the same day, exactly the same calendar age, but biologically they are over 2 years apart, which is of course very, very important in making decisions around their development, around their training, and also how we look at them as players in the academy, and if we want to continue with them, yes or no. So again, a very easy visualization, but really important in our academy setting. Then an example from our games. So this is the first table that we show in all the game reports. So again, same for the academy teams as for the first team. This is actually the one that's been used by the coaches the most. They really like to watch tables and not too much graphs often. So this is the summary of the game. So on the left you have normally the names, and then you have about 10 to 12 of our most important metrics that we measure in the game. Over the total game, and the color coding in here is actually done by a normation. So in our database we calculate which games were the really high and the really low ones. So what we did here is, if you get a red cell on a specific variable, it means on this variable you scored the lowest 25% that we ever measured on your specific playing position. So this is different for a striker than it is for a back, for instance. If you score dark green, it's the highest 25% that we ever measured, and if it's light green, it's pretty much average. Doesn't tell us anything about if the player played good or did not, because I think physical data doesn't really tell us that, but it does help in how we look into how we take care of our players after the game. So if we have guys going into green game by game, we probably know they need some more attention from the physios, and their recovery should be taken care of really well. So this helps highlight specific areas where we have to focus on. Of course, also a lot of tactical information in our databases. So this is one of the event data sheets that we have. In this case, this is about the positions in the game where we lose or win the ball. And of course, I didn't do a demo like Rusty did, but this is just fixed screenshots. But normally, of course, this is all dynamic, and you can pick games, different teams, different players, and get a lot of information about especially locations and things that happened in the game on the event data level. If we go into training, and then actually normally we use the same table in our first page of our training report as well. So again, the coaches can recognize the same data, same formula. So it's very comparable to the match report that we have. But I wanted to zoom in on a little bit more detail level in this. So normally we begin with that first page that you just saw, and then zooming into different exercises, or in this case, this is the biggest zoom level that we have. This is focusing on one specific player. So in this case, on the right, you can normally pick the player, get some information on them. And this shows us a summary, or actually a pretty big detail about what he did in this training session. So on the top left, you see the different exercises that we did. So in this case, we started with a rondo, we did some positioning, then some extended warm-up, some circuit work, and then we ended with a 5v5 game, 4 parts of that. And in green, you can see the amount of sprints that the player made per playing minute in that game. The red line above it is his average heart rate, corresponding to that load. And I think this is a perfect example where you see load going down, heart rates going up. There's some fatigue in this player going on. If you go to the right to the second graph, you see the work rate, just the amount of meters that the player is running per minute, and also his high intensity work rate in red. And on the bottom, you have the details of his sprints, so the different speed zones, and also his accelerations on the right. This is the most detailed level. So in our case, often what happens with training sessions, the coach gets a summary like this, and also often a summary per exercise that we do make graphically. And then this zoom level is often just used by the physical coaches that want that real detail of what happened in the session. So depending on who's watching the data, of course, we see different things happening. And this is, in my opinion, where it gets really interesting. Combining all our different data streams. So, for instance, we have tracking data from TROUGH from our games, both Eredivisie as well as European games. We have training data either coming from GPS or our LPM system, and getting that all together was always a big challenge. And since we have a good database structure and we work with Tableau, we can really easily see this. So in this example, you actually see data that's from 2 or maybe even 3 data streams from a specific week. So in this case, this is what we call our week overview. So this is our week load for all the players in the first team. So in this case, you see all the guys from left to right, and we have their playing time, their amount of sprints, their high intensity distance, and their total distance for the week. And in this case, all the intense colors are corresponding to game load, and the lighter colors, I hope you can see it right, is corresponding to training load. So you see the guys on the left are, of course, the guys that are the starters and that do play a lot. And on the right, you see the guys that play less, or actually on the far right, even the injured guys. The gray line that you see pulled through it is actually the average of all the guys that play at least 80% of the game minutes. So that's what we call our, let's say, our starter load. So the guys that play most of the games. And that's actually often the load that we aim for. So we want all the guys to be able to at least play 2 to 3 games a week. And of course, these guys are currently really doing that, but we have also some guys that are not. And I think it's always a challenge to keep this group that's a little bit in the middle of the graph, so not the injured guys, but the ones just to the left of that. How do we make sure that if they are necessary, if they are needed, and they have to play twice a week as well, what are we going to do with them? And this is often a very good discussion point with our physical coaches, and also of course with the head coach and the assistants. Okay, what should we expose the guys to during the week or during the next week to make sure that they are able to get to that point. Another example, this is our individual match overview. So if you want to compare games within a certain player, you can pick the team here, choose if you want to have all games, just league games, friendlies, whatever, and a certain time period. So in this case, I selected one current player. So this is actually a pretty recent one. So this is all our games from the last 4 months, and you can see what the guy did in all those specific games, and getting a good overview on that. And then I want to end the presentation with one example that we are currently using as mainly in the academy. This is our report on some of the physical tests. So in this case, you see actually sprinting time. So the upper graph is 0 to 30 meter sprint, with the 3 blocks corresponding to 10, 20, and 30 meter split times. Total time at the top. And in this case, you see a guy, this is actually a guy that's not in the academy anymore, but it's a guy that came in 2012, was in the academy until 2017. And in that period, he actually won about a second on his 30 meter time, going from 498 to 398 in his last test with the club. And on the bottom, you see his development over an agility course. So we do the Spark Nike agility test. And in this case, you see the guy developing from 7.6 in his first year towards 6.5 seconds in the last year with us. And actually, the fun thing here is that this is all combined also with a normation that we built on our database for specific age groups. So in this case, you can see back in his first year on the sprint on the top, he ran 199 on the first 10 meters, which actually back then he was in the let's see, the 50 to the 75th percentile of his age group. So you can see the normations on the right. The dark greens are the fastest 10% that we ever measured for that age group. The dark red is the slowest 10% that we ever measured. And then we have two groups in the middle that we call above and below average. So in this case, on sprinting, the guy was pretty good. On agility, actually, or change of direction, what I should say, he was actually pretty bad. He was with the worst 25% that we ever measured in some cases, worst 10% that we measured in some cases. And you see him struggling around this growth spurt. The data's not in here, but you see him in 2014, he really started growing. So his data's going pretty much up and down. And then after the growth spurt, he really starts developing, becomes stronger and faster. And he's actually with the fastest 10% on this test that we ever measured in his age group. And this is also, I think, one of the things that we are currently really developing. We are currently looking into trying to see if we can change this normation based on biological age instead of calendar age. So the years that you see now on the right are still calendar age, and it would, of course, be a lot better to compare the guys on their biological age, especially in those growing groups from, let's say, 13 to 16, 17. There's a lot of, I won't say mistakes, but it's not often a fair comparison between the guys if you do it on calendar age. So that's something we are really working on right now. And the last thing, I think that's a very exciting project that we are doing right now with one of our local universities, is that we are currently looking into, can we use this data to predict future performance. So let's say we have a trajectory of this guy from 2012 to 2017. Can we predict what he's going to do on these tests in a year or in 2 years? And that would, of course, be extremely beneficial, especially in an academy setting, on deciding, okay, which are the guys that we are continuing with in our education, and which are the guys that we have to say goodbye to. So hopefully in a year or two, we are able to actually extend this graph a little bit with some predicted values for this guy in the near future. It's still a project that's not finished, but it has some promising results. So we are really hoping that we can implement that really soon, and hopefully also in the same reports as we already have. So that was a really quick tour through our data landscape, and I know I couldn't get into too much detail, but if there's any questions, that I'm happy to help you out with these. So thanks for listening today. And if you want to be in touch, my contact information is on this sheet, so feel free to reach out. Fantastic. Thanks so much, Fred. Really appreciate it. We're going to have one last quick trivia question, and then we're going to move on to the Q&A. So just to let everyone know, we do have a hard stop at 22. So we'll have an extra 13 minutes on the session. But here's the final trivia question for you, and it is themed around PSV. So big one for you. Who did PSV beat to win their first European Cup? You know the answer. You can't say this one. I'm curious if someone knows this. It's a hard one. Had Star Bucharest, which is not correct. It's a very good guess though, Paul. Milan. It's not Milan. Let's see if you've got any more. Star Belgrade again. Good guesses. Not right. Nope, Barcelona. That was my first guess, but it's not correct. Benfica. Nope. Should we give them a hint? I feel like people are going to. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Someone's been on Google. Someone has it. So there we go. So we've got the right answer, and that was from Dana, and it was incorrect. It was correct. Sorry. So if you want to show the picture, I'm not even sure I can say it. It's Abista. Again, not one that's your commonly known one. So just make sure we get that jotted down for you, that you have won the final piece of trivia there. So what we'll move now is onto the Q&A. Congrats as well for getting that right. It was a challenging one. So again, this Q&A is open to all of us, but I feel like being honest, it's going to be mainly focused around Rusty and Ruud, as it should be. So we'll go to the first question that came in across Rusty's one, and I'll pass the questions over to Jimmy to pick up.
Sure. Yeah. So Rusty, this question for you here, talking about how you connect to data. So are you connecting directly to Qualtrics using that web data connector, or do you pull that data into Tableau Prep first? Andrea says sometimes it's getting Qualtrics data, survey data in the right format for analysis has been challenging.
Yeah, survey data can definitely be a little tricky to mess around with in Tableau. We thought about connecting directly to Qualtrics, but in the end decided we did not want to do that. We still use their API functionality, and instead we just connect directly to R, which is the data analysis program that we use in our shop. So we use the Qualtrics API, and then just every morning it'll download, bring the latest data in, and then there's a bunch of recoding and shaping and filtering and adding in other data sets that I just like to do in R rather than in Tableau Prep. And then the Tableau will just run off of a flat file that's we post online.
Awesome, thanks for that.
Nice, excellent.
So the next one then is for you, Ruud. Are you using Tableau for live data analysis during games?
No, not yet. I think we don't have all data live available. So we do have our event data live, of course, and there is some possibility to get our tracking data live. We did some experiments in the past when we worked with SportView before, on especially on the physical side, because that's my background is a little bit more in that with when Philippe Cocu was our head coach. And what we saw back then, that for the coaches, it was extremely hard to say, okay, do we really have the time and the resources also to use data live during the game? We actually had a halftime report ready. So let's say in the 44th minute, I got a report back to the coaches in the dressing room just before they got in. But then again, you have 15 minutes or even less when you take into account to walk into the dressing room and out. They want to watch 1 or 2 clips for 2, 3, 4 minutes, then have 3 or 4 minutes to talk to the guys, and then 2, 3, 4 minutes to prep the guys for the second half and the plan on that. So it's often really hard in that short break that you have to get some good feedback to them. It's definitely something we are still looking into. So we are currently experimenting a little bit with a chatbot that uses event data live. So if the coaches have some specific questions on, let's say, where do we lose the ball, or where do we take our shots, or where do our crosses come from, we have a chatbot available for them on the bench that they can get that information on. But it's not something that's really how do I say that, in our full program yet. That's has a really big place. So it's definitely something to develop for us.
Great, thanks. Jimmy, you'll take the next one.
Yep, sorry, and I skipped ahead here. Let's go back. This is another one for why at PSV is SS and analytics a combined role rather than being distinct? It seems like you got kind of a lot of ground to cover with both of those.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's mainly a money decision as well. So we don't have a budget like a lot of the clubs in the UK have, unfortunately. So the budget that we do have is mainly on the pitch with the players, which is, I think, definitely, if you compare us to the US sports, our capital is completely on the pitch and not outside of it. So we have a small team that we have to cover everything with. So it's definitely, if we could choose, we probably split the roles. And I think what happened over the last years is I have a real sports science background in the end. And what we saw happening was that a lot of analytics questions came up from, let's say, from a tactical perspective and from a coach's perspective. And the only group that was able to work with data in a proper way was the sports science department. So in the end, that was something that was slowly moving towards us, and I think it was a natural move. But yeah, if you would have the resources to build a bigger team, it would probably be logical to split it up a bit more, for sure.
Okay, brilliant. Another question again came in for you there is, do you use your data and views to support and evaluate the strategic and tactical decisions made by the head coach? If so, how do you do it?
I wouldn't say that we do that really yet. I think also it's close to the previous question. The combining of the two disciplines actually happened last year. So especially on the tactical and event data side, what actually happened in the past with us was it was often a task for the video analyst to do something with the event data that we had available or the tactical data that we had available. And you saw that was a lot of just explorative stuff that they did, but not real, let's say not real big analytics, and definitely not on a report basis. It was often just finding things out on an ad hoc basis from game to game. So we actually started building a proper a proper way of working around that from this season on. So it's definitely in development, and this would definitely be something really interesting for the future, but it's not something we do right now.
That's excellent. Another one, they're coming fast at you here, Ruud. Do you take context into consideration? For example, understanding the physical output of players against certain opposition, taking the systems formation into consideration, things like that?
Yeah, for sure. I think the stuff maybe Paul Bradley's working on right now from the UK is definitely really interesting. So putting, let's say, physical data into context on, okay, it's nice to know how much you sprint, but do you sprint to recover a ball, to go into depth, whatever. So getting that context from the game is really important. It's not really easy yet, so it's definitely something we are experimenting with. So the first simple things that we do is for instance, we calculate the difference between on and off the ball for the team. So let's say if we have our total game load, we divide it into in possession and out of possession. That will be the first step, and then going into more detail along the way. But it's definitely something that we try to do. Yeah, for sure.
Right. So again, we'll try and get through two more questions. How useful would it be to connect video directly to the data within Tableau, and is this something you'd like to explore if it becomes available?
Oh yeah, I guess towards Tableau, it's probably my biggest wish. So if you remember my sheet where you can, for instance, see the positions where we lose the ball, clicking on that specific ball loss and getting the video right away would be fantastic. Right now, it's often what we often do right now, for instance, that we can export a timeline to watch our video guys, and then they are able to watch it in their video analysis software, but it's not perfect. We did some experimentation with embedding links towards YouTube and stuff, but it's not perfect. So getting Tableau really embedded with video would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, as one for the community, you can request features on Tableau when you do your feedback. So if you have a look on Tableau's site, and if enough of you put in requests for that, it becomes something that the developers look at. So if you can get a community movement there, you may well see it. And then I guess the last question we'll try and fit in just before we have to wrap up. Two questions here about recruitment and scouting data. So do you use Tableau for sort of looking at targets, comparing targets?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Currently, what I stated in the first picture, our data scientist that's mainly working for scouting actually over the last couple of years built a completely custom-made tool for scouting, which of course wasn't Tableau. And actually, since we, let's say, merged the departments, he's already working for us internally. And we're now in the process of getting all the stuff that he's been doing over the last years into our own databases within the club, but he was working externally before. So we're actually in the process right now of getting his data also there. So the first thing we did was we made some of the reports that we had just available for our coaches also available for scouts, and the next steps will be to really integrate even more and more. So that's actually something that's one of the current projects that we do. Yeah.
Fantastic. And we had Chris Baker, who was at Huddersfield Town, talk about his recruitment strategy and how they used it on previous stuff. So you can find that on my LinkedIn profile. I share all of these. And actually, that's a good time for us to kind of bring it to close. So actually, I just want to take a second and thank Ruud and thank Rusty for their time. Again, we really appreciate you giving out your time and sharing how you use the software. And I'm sure everyone in the community does. The chat's been popping off today. So thanks again. And I'd love to give you everyone give you a round of applause, but we can't do that currently. So if everyone could, again, connect with each other, connect with yourselves and Rusty, if you've got more questions, then that'd be great. But I'm going to pass over Jimmy here to conclude for us.
Sure, yeah. We'll just echo Oscar. Appreciate you guys taking the time to chat. I think this went really well, having not only a large group, but having kind of two different sides of ways to look at sports analytics. I thought this was really interesting. Please feel free to join. the next session is not planned for October. That would be very impressive, or actually really not impressive. So please share around if you have questions. My email is there. Also happy to connect on LinkedIn, and we have our group on the U.S. sports and entertainment side, and I know Oscar also, I believe the LinkedIn group for the EU football TROUGH was posted in the chat as well. So.
User group. So anyone can find us on there. It'd be great if everyone could join both. And I'll be sharing this recording on my profile as soon as we get it. But again, thanks everyone, and been a pleasure sharing it all with you. And thanks again to the presenters.
Thanks very much.